You've got mail. You've got mail. You've got mail. You've got mail. You've got
The internet has, since its inception, been filled with some of the most outlandish, horrific, and disturbing content that by today's standards are completely depraved. But back in the early days of the World Wide Web, this type of content was everywhere and had more than one website dedicated to it. Rotten.com, Ogrish, LiveLeak, and many more, all known for one thing: shock content. This was a very unfortunate part of the early online culture, and still to this day, haunts corners of the internet. But in 2014, an anonymous user of one of these sites would take it too far and start one of the biggest ongoing manhunts the internet has ever seen. It's the early 2010s, and the internet has changed forever. The rise of social media made many websites near fully irrelevant, relics of the past in an instant. On top of this, more stringent rules from Google and a closer eye from the government made certain websites have to either change their ways or die holding on to their identity. Websites like the previously mentioned and many more were quickly getting shut down, or having to change their rules and ways of enforcement fairly quickly to stay in a legal gray zone. This was due to a court case against the website known as bestscore.com, a website that hosted, well, you can kind of guess by the name. But there was one specific video that they hosted on their website, and it was what got the entire thing shut down. One man, one ice pick. In 2012, Luca Magnotta murdered a man named Jun Lin and uploaded the video onto the website. This then led to the arrest of the owner, Mark Merrick, in 2013, for the charge of corrupting morals. A very rare charge, but a very severe one passed out by Canadian law enforcement, prohibiting the creation, publication, or possession of obscene material. This set a major precedent in the way websites were to operate, and as coverage of the Merrick arrest and criminal proceedings started to gain more traction by mainstream news outlets in 2014, more and more public outrage started to come down on Google, and the internet as a whole, to crack down on sites like Merrick's. On top of this, at the exact same time, a well-known terrorist organization began to post increasingly graphic propaganda online anywhere they saw fit. This led to a massive snowball effect, as other shock site operators saw the outcry and the arrest and began proactively shutting down and restricting content to avoid a similar fate. Because of this, many of these websites could not keep going, and the ones that did wouldn't last very long. Ogrish effectively vanished and became part of LiveLeak, which would be shut down later in 2021. This would be the fate of many of these websites, especially since website host providers started to effect stricter rulings, destroying what little websites like this existed. But on top of this, as stated previously, social media was on the rise and was quickly eating away at the share of user attention that other websites had. The shock sites just couldn't keep up. But unfortunately, one of them tried their hardest and succeeded for a time. In 2014, in the midst of all the website shutdowns and legal battles, one website went by practically unscathed. This being due to the way that they handled the new web hosting terms of service, deathaddicts.com. Death Addicts was a little different from the other major shock websites from the get-go. They were privatized, a closed community of folks in it for the worst of the worst. Unlike these other sites, you actually needed to register an account to be here and view most of the content, with the most risky of content having been locked behind private threads, only for veterans of the website to see. This allowed moderators stricter control over what can and can't be seen with a simple account sign-up. On top of this, they had a very strict proactive moderation policy on anything considered legally risky, as gore itself is not technically illegal. Some forms of it can be, but things such as historical videos and things considered medical fall into legal gray areas. This bought them a lot of time and made them practically immune to the changes. It also made them the de facto website for all things graphic, taking in more and more users from the now gone shock sites that once sat on top of the web. And with this newfound popularity of the site came something sinister, and the beginning of our story. In 2014, on both deathaddicts.com and on the 4chan board/B, a new user would abruptly make a name for himself. Master was his self-given title, but it wasn't what people would come to know him as. Dr.Gloves was the name given to him by those who saw his posts, for obvious reasons. What I am about to show within the rest of this video will be heavily redacted, and even with that being said, given the context, is not for the faint of heart. If for some reason the mention of shock content and the warning at the beginning of this video didn't scare you off, maybe now is a good time to reconsider your viewing. Right off the bat, what Dr.Gloves would post on a Death Addicts would become too much, even for those who regularly enjoy content centered around death and the extreme, as his posts were not your average cartel or horrible accident caught on camera. He was making his own original content. According to Dr.Gloves himself, all of the pictures he was uploading were, to his own admission, self-made. The images he uploaded were something else. All of the photos showed a man wearing surgical gloves and a homemade GIMP mask, most of which would be set in a medical setting of some sort. All of which showed children, fetuses, some of them dead, some of them alive. The images, according to investigators, were released in batches. The first batch released sometime in 2014 and is known as the Walk-In Cooler series. The primary focus of this set was, disgusting as it is to say, infant organs and a deceased preterm fetus he would throw into the air, most of which would be showcased on a broiler pan used for cooking and was clearly brought from his own home, as it looks to have been used over the years. He appears in this set in a blue pair of scrubs with clear latex gloves. The setting in these images are a bit of a mystery still to me, as I don't believe that he is in a walk-in cooler as the title suggests. Let me explain. The wall looks more like painted over wood, like something you would see in a home. I can't exactly pinpoint where in a home this would be, as the lining makes it seem more like a painted over utility cabinet than something you would see in a cooler. On top of this, the sweat shown in these images doesn't really match up. How would it be hot enough in a cooler for him to be sweating like this, as he is in the image? He is wearing a latex GIMP mask, which would get hot fairly easily. But from experience myself of working in industrial walk-in coolers, even having something skin tight would not make you sweat this much, especially if that cooler is meant to host fragile and heat-sensitive material. On top of this, the plate is very clearly not from a hospital environment. I believe that this set of images were more than likely taken inside of his house, in which he smuggled the items out of a hospital-like environment, which is why he was comfortable enough to take these images in the first place. Where and how in a hospital would he have gotten enough free time without being spotted by others or by a camera would he be able to not only wear a GIMP mask, but also toy with organs and cadavers? Where in a hospital would you even find a setting that looks like it was completely made of plywood? And why is he sweating so much if he's inside a cooler? The next set of images is far more disturbing. More than likely posted sometime within 2015 came the Morg series, as dubbed by investigators. This set contained a lot more photos, and a lot more identifying information. In these photos, he appears to aggressively handle and choke deceased infant remains, approximately aged between 2 to 3 months. The individual also poses for photographs while using their left hand to choke a deceased infant. He starts to use a thumbs up gesture next to the deceased infant remains, and using various medical instruments to mutilate or feign mutilation of the infant remains. The setting here was a lot more medical than the first photos, and through that, investigators actually had some leads. In these photos, the setting is an unkempt, old-looking wing of a medical building. The floors are stained and in some parts cracked, as if it has been unused and unkempt for some time, with wooden and what looks to be falling apart interiors. Yet there's modern medical tech here, refrigerators, lifts, from a company that investigators found to be Mortec Manufacturing. The models could be from the M600/2 or M600/3 series, dating from 2005 to 2012, meaning this was still clearly being used as a medical facility, despite being so worn down. Mortec Manufacturing ships across the country and even into Mexico, but the vast majority of its business comes from the West Coast, pinning this to be more than likely in California. On top of this, it's a known fact that many coroners' offices and morgues run on very thin margins, meaning that upgrades to these buildings rarely happen, if at all. UCLA is known to run many of its medical buildings out of old, dilapidated buildings, along with morgues and coroners' offices. So unless we can pin where this exact floor pattern is, I doubt we will know exactly what building this is in. But there was another piece of evidence in these photos that seemed to be a major glaring mistake for Dr. Gloves. His badge was right there. And two of the images said a badge at his side. Edwin Balians. We had a name. Edwin Balians was or is a doctor working for the Glendale Memorial Hospital. We know of that because of internet investigators. Once this was found, he immediately started to get hunted down. This led to constant harassment toward Edwin, and honestly justifiably so, but unfortunately found out too little, too late, that the badge was a red herring. Upon further investigation onto the set of images, it turned out that the badge was photoshopped in. Dr. Gloves, or a troll, was very meticulous. This was very clearly thought out, but I questioned where he could have even gotten the badge in the first place in order to Photoshop it in and frame an entirely different doctor. Then came the third set, and it's honestly even more disturbing than the last. And this is due to the fact that unlike the other images, this one has a live child, not in a medical setting. These showed up sometime in 2015 to 2016. The first three show Dr. Gloves holding a hobby X-Acto knife set that you can buy from any retail store across the country. But they also show a little girl from around the age of 4 to 9 being abused. We know little to nothing about this set of images. We don't know who the girl is, and she remains fully unidentified to this day. What I find interesting about this set, however, is that the background of these images almost fully matches the background of the first set. I believe both of these sets of images come from his own house. The paint is almost identical to each other, and with that, as messed up as it is, I hope the girl in the picture is his own daughter, because if not, we might be looking at a missing person. The next set, despite me saying it for all of them, somehow is even more disturbing. Set 4, known as the medically vulnerable children, came out sometime in 2016. This set had the most evidence yet, but it also had the most victims. In all of these photos was a new child, and in one of them was a newborn. Dr. Gloves poses with several medically vulnerable, ventilator-dependent children. Ages are estimated to be between 2 and 12 years old, while pressing his fingers over their mouth and noses. The picture of the infant is of Dr. Gloves smothering it. This was also the image that confirmed where Dr. Gloves was operating. The blanket in the infant picture has a pattern specific to hospitals ran by Dignity Health, placing him firmly in Southern California. Unfortunately, this is where things get even more muddy. Throughout 2016, amateur investigators on shock forums, Reddit, and image boards pulled information to track down Dr. Gloves. Users on Death Addict and 4chan scoured the photos for any identifying details: hospital signage, equipment labels, the style of electrical outlets, even the distinctive orange six-pointed star logo on a hospital baby blanket visible in one image. These efforts yielded important leads, and by late 2016, the consensus was that the hospital images were taken in Southern California. For example, the infant blanket. It was traced to a 2015 branding campaign for Dignity Health hospitals. Death Addict, which has since gone completely offline, reportedly disallowed further sharing of the images due to their extreme and possibly illegal nature. And 4chan threads on the topic were basically removed by mods under rules forbidding sexual or obscene content involving children. The case, thus, entered online folklore as an unresolved internet mystery. On top of this, almost every single post relating to Dr. Gloves before 2023 on any website has basically been erased, making it fairly difficult to get any newer information. Luckily, a true crime podcast known as Invisible Choir has made a dedicated website with all of the information currently known, along with the images. Any clues that could have been in the original posts have been deleted. That, mixed with a lot of misinformation and trolling, has led to a bit of a muddy dead end. Most of the investigation was done within 2018, but would die off only to be revived again in 2021, thanks in part to the crowdsourced findings on Reddit. This case was brought directly to authorities. In 2022, the San Bernardino County Police opened an official investigation. Investigators reached out to Dignity Health, the hospital network, for any help they can get. By consulting hospital officials, they confirmed that several photos in one series were indeed taken at a Dignity Health campus in San Bernardino, California, but have confirmed that whoever this person is was not in their system, yet somehow got access. This meant that at least some of the abuse occurred on actual hospital premises. However, hospital records showed no employee matching the suspect. The perpetrator was likely an outsider who gained unauthorized access, not a staff doctor or a morgue worker. Throughout 2022, detectives, cybercrime specialists, and even medical professionals formed a task force to identify the man behind the mask. Over the course of the investigation, more than a dozen search warrants were obtained to gather any evidence they could. By the end of 2022, law enforcement had also reviewed the photographs with medical staff and prosecutors to determine the applicable charges. They did believe crimes had occurred, such as child abuse, battery, and desecration of remains, disproving a rumor that seemingly started about Dr. Gloves, stating the FBI had no interest in this case and couldn't do anything due to statute of limitations, or because nothing illegal was done here, which, it's very clear that this is illegal. Unauthorized access to cadavers, corpses of children, and abuse to living ones, clearly in need of care. I honestly am a little shocked that it was a theory in the first place, but that's what happens on the internet. Anyways, with the ongoing investigation happening in San Bernardino, and Dr. Gloves' pinpointed location, we do have a chance of finding him. The investigation got most of its breakthroughs in 2023. The multi-agency investigation made headway on several fronts. By mid-2023, police had interviewed multiple people of interest, people with access to the hospital or similar profiles, though no arrest had been made. In the fall of 2023, the case gained wider public exposure when the Invisible Choir True Crime podcast released a dedicated multi-part investigative series titled Who is Dr. Gloves? Invisible Choir worked very closely with the Reddit sleuths and law enforcement, turning their findings into a narrative while keeping key details censored for the public. In that appeal, it was revealed that local police and FBI were actively involved, with, again, the multiple search warrants executed and multiple individuals interrogated, but no arrest or identification of the perpetrator yet. The public was urged to help identify the locations and any people in the photos. And as a reward, bounties of up to $1,000 were put on helping the investigation out. Despite the lack of an arrest, community efforts have continued. By late 2024, most leads pointed towards a perpetrator in Southern California, as stated prior. And as the San Bernardino police have stated, the case remains open and active. Some forensic avenues, such as facial recognition on the child victims or extracting fingerprints from the images, are being explored or suggested by more tech-savvy users. And to this day, the case remains open, and we still have no idea who it could possibly be. During all of this, a lot of misinformation around the case was fully cleared up, and with it came some darker implications. So let's talk about them. Rumor 1. The FBI refused the case. As mentioned before, there was a theory that the FBI refused to investigate this case due to nothing illegal taking place in these images, which we know is false. And again, not exactly the smartest theory out there. Number 2. Dr.Gloves is a child mortician or staff member at the community hospital of San Bernardino, or in the broader California region. This theory relies on the idea that he worked in hospitals, but we know he doesn't. So as much as this theory makes sense, it's just not applicable here. On top of this, child mortician isn't actually a career, as there's zero distinction between a normal mortician and a child mortician. It's just the same. Number 3. There is one individual behind the Dr.Gloves series of images. This one I wish was true, but we know the internet. During the investigation into Dr.Gloves, it was noted that multiple images from the sets were not from the original Dr.Gloves, 2 of which were from a Mexican hospital training video, thank God, but the others, unfortunately, point to something even more sinister. There were copycats. But yet again, we don't know that for certain, and it's more of a leading theory than concrete. We do know from the angles taken in the photos that he may not have been alone during the photo shoots, but it's possible he was just using a tripod. But that's just me hoping. And the FBI, and the vast majority of investigators, believe there is multiple people involved in the shooting of these photos. There is still a lot about the case that needs to be answered, and a lot of that could help uncover who he truly is. As per the Who is Dr.Gloves website, the 3 main things they need help with in this investigation are as follows: identifying the location and authenticity of the infant brain photos depicted in Series 1. One of law enforcement's primary remaining questions is where the alleged infant brains and other organs were photographed, and how Dr.Gloves got access to multiple infant human organs without being detected by facility staff or through typical autopsy protocols. Identifying the location of the morgue and the relevance of photos taken there. We have yet to definitively link the morgue photographs to those taken at the Dignity Health Hospital campus in San Bernardino. The location of the morgue is key to determine whether or not these photos are connected to the child exploitation and abuse, or if they were merely added to the collection from somewhere else for shock value. And of course, who is Dr.Gloves? We have already gone through every single image and identified the brands and types of gloves, clothing, and other potential identifiers captured in these horrific photographs. We need your help identifying these locations and the person or persons behind the mask, capturing and distributing the photographs. And a personal question I have for this case is how exactly he got his hands on this man's badge in order to Photoshop it. I personally feel like it would be a little bit harder than just to Google search a doctor's badge who just so happens to work in the branch of hospitals that you're targeting. There are a lot of questions, and hopefully soon we get our answers. Thank you to everyone who is participating in this investigation. It's a huge undertaking. And a special thank you to Invisible Choir for your investigation and bringing more awareness to this case. I'll be linking their website and their podcast down below. This case was one of the darkest that I've had to look through for this channel so far. It is quite up there, and I hope to God that one day that Dr. Gloves gets unmasked. And hopefully this video helps get some new leads, or just get some new eyeballs on the case. Stuff like this is a grim reminder of just how depraved the internet can be at times. And it always leaves me to wonder, just what else is there, out there, in the World Wide Web? Anyways, have a good night.